those of you who attend my weekly shiurim, where I speak a little more casually, then you know how much I gain from those opportunities. So this group of rabbis is one of the most sincere groups, L'Shem Shamayim groups I've ever been a part of, and the Rosh, the one that we all look to for much guidance, although he doesn't realize it, and one that I have learned personally, and I know the others in the group have learned a tremendous amount as to what it means to be a Rav, is from Rabbi Feldman. And it's really a schus, a covet for us to have him speak to our Kehillah tonight. Thank you very much, Rabbi Feldman, for agreeing to do this. And at the end of the talk, then there will be an opportunity if anyone does have questions or comments they'd like to share them, please stay on, and there will be that opportunity. Rabbi Feldman.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Schwartz. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly about the chevra, the group that you and I are part of. And I must tell you that I think that I get just sitting around the table with Rabbanim Chashuvim like yourself is tremendously meaningful to me. And I did not know, you're correct, I did not know that people look to me for leadership. Now I'll have to straighten my tie when we get together. But it really, it's an honor to speak to your Kehillah. It's an honor to be invited. What I'm going to say tonight, I have not said to my Kehillah yet, although I've spent quite a bit of time on Zoom with them. So this is like a first-time effort, and I wouldn't call the wonderful people, the holy Jews who are on the Zoom call right now, I wouldn't call them guinea pigs, but I'm trying out something a little bit different than normal. Now, so first of all, I want to make a request of everybody. I know when I listen to Shiurim online, when I watch a lot of these videos or even the Zoom calls, first of all, one of the most comfortable things about Zoom is that you can actually put on black video and mute, and then you can go about doing your business, and that's fine. Everybody can do whatever they want. You can put your feet up. You can recline, you can be eating, you can do whatever you want. But one of the drawbacks of Zoom is that when you watch it, you're watching the person as he's talking to other people, Ke'ilu. It's as if he's not talking to me, he's talking to everybody else, and I'm listening in to see if it's meaningful to me or if he's doing a good job or whatever. So I'm requesting that you listen to me as if I'm talking personally to you. I don't know you. Most of you, I see a couple of names here that I know, that I have tremendous affinity for, but most of the people here I don't know, but I'm talking to you. I'm actually talking to you, and I want you to draw what I'm saying towards you as if it's just a personal conversation. Because what I've designed this conversation really to make a difference. You know, sometimes there are talks, and I am one of those who provides these talks, where I call it from entertainment. It's just, it's a way of focusing my attention or focusing the attention of the listener on something, matters of Yiras Shamayim. But at the end of the day, the person comes away either feeling a bit inspired or not, but not really having a tool to make a difference in life, in action, in their real life. So I don't want this to be from entertainment. I've designed this conversation to be one that makes a difference for you. And that means that it can only make a difference if you're participating mentally in a way that we're having this conversation from me to you, and actually probably from you to me, because there'll be room for comments or questions or observations at the end, or objections for that matter. So I also have to be reminded to look at the camera, not at the picture. Makes it look like I'm looking down as opposed to looking at the camera. So I got that reminder. So here's my goal. My goal is that your experience of this Corona crisis actually makes a difference for you, as opposed to something else, which is that it's a big deal, it's a major disruption, there's tremendous pain and suffering and sacrifice, mesirus nefesh, and frustration, and challenges, trivial things, large things, and we get through it, and then we talk about it, and we say some things, perhaps even in a language that reflects the fact that we are God-fearing people, But at the end of the day, it might not make a difference. That's my greatest fear. I literally live in fear of this, that we're going to get back to whatever normal is, and we won't have anything to show for this experience. And I like to dramatize the problem, the challenge, this way. And as we know we're going through something that we can tell, so to speak, with grandchildren about. We hope it's something that happened and then it's over, and we can talk about it to our grandchildren as if it's in the past. It might be that we'll be talking to our grandchildren about a day before this, which is when we used to actually get in the car and go anywhere we wanted and then get out and not wear a mask, and we had no social distancing and that kind of a thing. Let's hope that this is a temporary experience. That's one of the dimensions of this whole thing, is we don't know. We do not know how this thing is going to end, how it's going to work out. But here's how I would dramatize the whole challenge. So let's say that we're telling this over to people who were too young to remember or who weren't born yet. We're telling them about this experience, and we describe it in any way that our personal experiences, the global experience, and they turn to us innocently and they say, I don't know, they're 10 years old or they're 12 years old or they're 15 years old, and they say, what did you get from it? What would you be able to say? What would you say? And it's too soon to have an answer, by the way. We're in the middle of it, and we're still coming to terms with it. But we want to have an answer, and we want to be dealing with this in a way that that we'll have an answer. We want to actually develop an answer, be at work and developing an answer. What did we get from it? To make it even more dramatic, and please forgive me, there are people who have suffered losses here in our community. We've had people who've gotten up from Shiva today for people who were nifter, Rahman al-Islam, during this thing. I'm sure that's the case there in Providence as well. Hundreds of people got up from Shiva today. It's unbelievable. Wednesday morning after Yom Tov, Shiva began, so to speak, right after Yom Tov. Hundreds of people got up from Shiva. And it's just it's a makkah for the individuals who lost loved ones, we're all aware of people in our lives who we care about very much who are suffering terrible losses, and it's also a makkah for Klal Yisrael as a whole. Just the whole idea. It's just an overwhelming. It's hard to absorb the whole thing. It's hard to absorb the size of the losses and the numbers and the widespread impact of it. And I think we're all in a little bit of shock. And also those of us who are not in the epicenter of the magefa, of the plague, I think that we are still, I wouldn't call it denial, but we're not in full touch with what's gone on over here. Hundreds and hundreds of people who just got up from Shiva today. So why am I saying that? Because let's say after 120 years, we encounter a neshama of an individual who passed away during this time. And that neshama says, what did you get from this thing that had to hit the world and I had to die? And I'm hoping that those are left behind. I hope that somehow your life changed. Now, why do I say that? Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't have to be that way. Maybe we daven for the best, and we recognize that there's a magefa, and we recognize that people have suffered, and we know that people are sick, and we know that other people don't want to get sick, and we daven, and then we get through this, and we do the right thing. We had a Yom Tov the best way we could, given the limitations, and we come back to shul, and we're happy that we're back to shul. Why can't it just be that way? Why do I even ask the question, what are we going to get from it? Why do you have to get something from it? Why do I have to make that a problem? So the answer is because the Rebbeinu Shalom Ki'ilu, it's as if he's saying to us, I pulled out all the stops. I made it so obvious that I am running the world actively, not just theoretically and not just from a distance and not just belief, but like you can't avoid me, because if you just go back a few weeks, if you would have told any intelligent observer on this planet that in only a few days, traffic everywhere in the world would stop, that in only a few days, people would all be sheltering in their homes, sheltering. Oh my heavens, there must be a nuclear war. If you would have told anybody that Rabbanim would be sometimes literally standing at the doors of their shuls, making sure that no person had the chutzpah to try to come into shul to daven with a minyan. And the Rabbanim actually were the ones who made sure and who heard reports that people were having illegal minyanim, and Rabbanim did what they could to stop it. I mean, I'm talking about just the absolute unlikelihood and the fact that all of this happened in almost an instant, and that the economy, the stock market, which was going through the roof, and it was the American economy was humming, and the world economy was doing well, and trade was doing well, and travel had reached all-time heights, and airlines are doing well, and literally in days, the whole thing plummets. If I would have told you that was going to happen, you would have said there must have been a huge nuclear war. Somebody either accidentally or on purpose started a nuclear war, or there was a huge earthquake that wiped out half of Far East Asia or California, and or something like that. But we can't even see what happened. I mean, spring is going on. It's a gorgeous day, gorgeous weather, at least here in Atlanta, and yet all this is going on around the world in a few days. This is literally a revelation of the hand of God. Does HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveal himself so powerfully, so openly, in a way that's almost impossible to ignore, and then not expect that will make a difference. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chavodo u'v'atzmo makes sure that we can't avoid him. And after all is said and done, we're just going to make sure we don't die of the disease. And then when we don't die and when we get through it, we find a vaccine, we'll go back and we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you are awesome. It was really nice seeing you. And that's it. It can't be. It's got to be that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu has such a gilui shechina that something happens to us. So I want to introduce a distinction which is probably not brand new to you, but I want to refer to it a couple times, and I think it's worth knowing, and that is the distinction of surviving something versus taking responsibility for something. Surviving something means that we do whatever we have to do in order to get through something. Taking responsibility for something means that we actually know that in every single situation that we're in, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us responsibilities, and we have choices, and we can exercise, and we must exercise bechira. We must exercise our uniquely human capacity to make choices. And every single situation in life presents opportunities for choices, for us to make the right choice or to make the wrong choice. When we're surviving something, we're not making choices. When we're surviving something, we're just getting through it. We're just making sure that it doesn't get the better of us. When we're surviving something, when we're in that mindset, we are actually victims of circumstances. The circumstances are there. We have to deal with them. And we got to make sure the circumstances don't get the better of us. If we do survive or if we don't survive, either way, we have no power in the mode of survival, because the circumstances are there, and we've got to deal with it. And we've got to avoid being conquered by them. And so we're in a reactive mode. And in that mode, we can't really see ourselves as powerful people who are making choices. So, for example, lo aleinu, there's no comparison whatsoever, our situation and what went on in the Holocaust. I shouldn't say whatsoever. There are some comparisons. But there are some people who thought that their job was only to survive, and there's some people who automatically knew that even in the hell of a concentration camp, even in those circumstances, there's bechira. There are choices for us to make, and there are opportunities to reflect the reality that we are creatures of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we are his servants. So in this situation here, are we surviving everything, or are we actually exercising our bechira? Are we using the situation to discover something about ourselves and to discover something about our service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? I'll give you a small example of what I mean. It's a very delicate it doesn't necessarily manifest itself in dramatic things. So we are now officially, according to CDC and according to Social Security, my wife and I, we are old. We are officially old, which means that according to this disease, we're the people that we have to be more concerned about than other people because we are vulnerable because of our age. Okay, so for the last, other than the shul building, for the last 4 weeks, I'm not sure exactly the date, but something like 4 weeks at least, we have not been in another building. We've been outside of our house. Of course, we've been, Baruch Hashem, we've been able to walk around on Shabbos and Yom Tov, keep our distance, but we've not been inside another building. So how do we have food? So Baruch Hashem, we also have kids here in town, and once in a while we them to do some shopping for us, but we don't want to bother them too much. So we got a shopping service, and for $14.95 a month, I'm able to make my order on the computer, and most of it comes exactly the way we asked. And it's very good, and so on and so forth. Now there are two ways to deal with that whole situation. One is I don't want to starve, so what am I going to do? I got to get a shopping service. Another way to deal with it, another issue is I don't want to depend on other people. So okay, I got a shopping service. In that sense, the modality I'm in that thing, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just I'm surviving a problem. Then there's another way of looking at it, which is I want to take responsibility for my life. I want to make sure that I am the one who is taking care of things. And it's the same shopping service, but in one case, I'm avoiding a problem. In another case, I'm actually, let's use a colloquial term, I'm manning up to a situation. I'm taking responsibility, and I'm not waiting. I'm not waiting for anybody or anything. I'm not relying. I'm simply going to do whatever I have to do to make sure that this works. That's a small example. So I want to get a little practical over here. But I want to be very clear about something, because at some time, in some of the background noise that we hear from some of the discussions about what the Rebbe Shalom wants from us, we can get confused. And it's possible for us to think that the speaker is explaining what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what God had in mind. I have no idea what God had in mind. Matter of fact, I know that I don't know. And even if I had an idea, I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. The reason I know that is because I'm not a Navi, meaning there used to be a period of time in Jewish history, and there are reasons that that period doesn't exist anymore, but there used to be a period of time in Jewish history where HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually communicated with human beings and told human beings in advance of the calamity that the following is going to happen as a result of the calamity, unless things change. Or maybe not. I've already decided I'm going to do this. And then when it happens, the Navi explains, both before it happens and then after it happens, the Navi explains in the words that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him, more or less, in an accurate way, what Hashem has in mind. That doesn't exist now. We do have certain directives in the Torah. We do have certain indications in the Torah of certain kinds of things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will do under certain circumstances. But nobody has the ability to say that they know what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has in mind or why he did this. What we do have the ability to do is say, he did this. Now, I remember when I was a kid, most people who have siblings will find this very familiar. I'm the oldest. I was the perfect guy. I did everything right. I never angered my parents, as far as I know. But my brothers, they were terrible. They weren't really, but of course, as a Bechor, a 9-year-old Bechor, I thought everything they did was wrong. When they got in trouble, I went and cleaned my room, even though nobody was mad at me for my room not being clean. But when they got in trouble, I went and cleaned. Why? Because at that minute, my parents were exercising parental authority, and all of a sudden, all of their authority reminded me of where I was delinquent in my things. And so I had better clean my room, because I realized there's somebody in charge here and they have expectations, and I've been acting like they don't exist. But now I realize I better get my act together. Similarly, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu acts, we don't need to know why he did this. What we do need to know is that he did this. And the fact that he did this causes us to remember there's an authority here. there are many things in which our integrity is lacking, meaning there are many things where even though we are committed as Jews to follow the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there are many, many ways that we already know from before he acted, before he revealed himself in such an overt way. We already know the areas that are lacking. And therefore, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu forces himself upon us the way he has on so many levels, so, we have to start cleaning our room. So we have to start looking at things that we already are aware of. I just want to address one other thing also, just because I think it's worth mentioning. Is Mashiach coming? So I can tell you absolutely, definitively, without a doubt, he is absolutely coming. I have no idea when, but I know he's coming, and I don't believe he's coming any more than I believed he was coming before the corona thing attacked the world. And do I think that the corona thing could be some kind of I hope it is, but there's no way of knowing. And Klal Yisrael has been through unbelievable, wonderful things and unbelievable trauma. And we were sure that those things were the final Chevle Mashiach, the final birth pangs of Mashiach. And it didn't happen the way we thought. So I don't believe that that's the appropriate Jewish way to react to a cataclysmic event or some global event like what we're seeing and to start talking Mashiach talk. I think that we are always should be aware of Mashiach and we should yearn for Mashiach. And the yearning for Mashiach should be not so that we can have it easier. The yearning for Mashiach should be because we want the world to know about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in that sense, there is a ruach, not overwhelming, because those who want to not know will continue to not know, but there is a ruach of awareness of a divine being running the show, flipping the switches and making things happen. And I think that we, as Am Hashem, we certainly want to live in such a way that were Mashiach to come, we were ready. We were not sleepwalking in anticipation of his coming. Now, this business about survival, it's I'm using that word, but there's another word that we have in our Masorah that is very important for us to keep in mind, and that is the concept of mitzvahs anashim melumada, doing mitzvahs habitually, which we're told. Matter of fact, Rashi quotes that phrase, which is borrowed from the Nevi'im. Rashi quotes that phrase in the Tochacha in Kisavo, where the Torah says, "Tachas asher lo avadatos Hashem elokecha b'simcha v'tuv levav," that these curses befell the Jewish people because you didn't serve God with joy and a full heart and a good heart. Mirav kol, from an abundance of good. And Rashi says, "Zum mitzvos hanashim melumada," that performing mitzvahs out of habit. What is so terrible about that? So without going deeply into it, certainly taking those measures which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us to connect to him and turning them into robotic, mechanical behaviors, certainly that's a travesty. To take that which is designed to forge a direct connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to bring him into the world and to elevate myself, to connect to him, to connect heaven to earth and earth to heaven, and to take it and just turn it into a casual robotic behavior, that's a travesty. It's a terrible thing. It means that we're turning Torah and mitzvahs into a lifestyle. A lifestyle. Lifestyle is that which governs my consciousness day and night, and I just behave within that lifestyle. I don't think about it, right? An American lifestyle isn't thought about. No American wakes up in the morning and says, I'm an American, I think I'll choose the American lifestyle today. He just lives into the lifestyle, Similarly, we don't want to just live into a Jewish lifestyle of Torah and mitzvahs. It's a lifestyle. This is our lifestyle. Everybody else is another. That's not what it is. So that all of that is in the mode of survival, which means that when you're in a survival mode, what happens is a major event like what just happened to us happens, and we still retain the need to sleepwalk through it. We just try to get through it so that we can get back to normal, so to speak, as opposed to being creative. When I'm in survival mode, the focus is on out there. The focus is on what's happening. The focus is on what on what people are doing. The focus is on my opinions about what people are doing. Is Trump right? Is Trump wrong? Are they correct in Borough Park and in Williamsburg and in Crown Heights and in Lakewood and in Muncie? Are they right? Are they wrong? Should they have? Should they not have? You're filled with opinions about everything but yourself when you're in survival mode. When you're in creative mode, guess what your focus is? Your focus is on you because you're actually taking responsibility for your life. You don't have time for opinions. You don't have time for resentments. You don't have time for condemnations. You don't have time for criticism. What you have time for is, how can I find HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How can I serve him? How can I improve my life? How can I improve my relationships? It's a totally different thing. The question is about me. It's about taking responsibility for my life. Being responsible for my life is not an easy thing. That's why we resort to habit, because it's much easier to attribute the way my life looks in every area, spiritually, financially, relationship-wise. It's much easier to attribute it to other people and other circumstances and other background issues, and not to myself, and not take responsibility. So I'm talking about the fact that here we are, and I know I spent quite a bit of time just setting that up, but here we are in the middle of a major deal, and we want to really put the focus on ourselves. So I want to make a couple of suggestions, and I would suggest that you have in front of you pen and paper, because I may trigger some thoughts of your own. You don't have to share them with anybody, but I just think it's good to have pen and paper in front of you. So if you don't have it in front of you, go ahead and get it. And even if you don't write a single thing down, the fact that you have pen in hand will make a difference, because you'll be thinking about your own situation. So first of all, one suggestion, and I'm going to get to a couple of these may be a bit annoying or disturbing and not run of the mill, but I think they're worthy of your attention. The first suggestion, believe it or not, in a certain critical way, nothing has changed at all. Why? Because there's still this truth. There's a God and there's you. And the question is always, every day, today included, and it was this way before Corona hit as well, what is my responsibility to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What's my responsibility to God? That nothing's changed. We got to always ask that question. And the fact that the circumstances are unusual and dramatic, or even painful, or terribly sad or overwhelming, or difficult, or whatever it is, or just weird, the fact that circumstances are different doesn't change anything. And I still have to be asking myself what my responsibility is today to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's number one. Number two, before we get into what I should learn from this, or what I should take out from it, before I do that, there's this thing called awe. 3 letters, A-W-E, awe, which is sitting back and admiring what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has done. We just spent a few minutes about that before, but what I'm saying is that in order to have awe, believe it or not, in order to have awe, you have to be willing to observe and to absorb, which means if you're rushing around or if you're staying busy, you can't have awe. Awe is a function of contemplation. And given that we know that what has happened in this world is unprecedented, it's worthy of our time and effort to do nothing a little bit each day, or do nothing once in a while, and just sit back and think and watch as HaKadosh Baruch Hu manipulates the entire planet in surprising ways, without interpreting it. As a matter of fact, let me I'll make a bold suggestion, not a suggestion for action, but a suggestion about an idea. In trying to find out what Hashem wants us to do, or even trying to find out what I should do, that's step 2. But if we do that too early, we will actually be attempting to wrest control of this coronavirus from HaKadosh Baruch Hu and control it ourselves. Because if we could put a label on it, if we say, this is what I have to get out of it, this is why Hashem is doing it, this is the lesson that we should learn, So immediately now I've reduced it to my puny mind's idea of what God has in mind. And that's my poor attempt at controlling the coronavirus because I'm so overwhelmed by it. I now have figured out a way not to be overwhelmed because I've interpreted it. I have a pshat. I have an approach that before that we have to be in awe. We have to be overwhelmed. We should expect to be overwhelmed and in awe. The way when you stand at Grand Canyon and you look at the Grand Canyon, it's nothing but overwhelming if you just stand there and take it in and give yourself a chance to have some quiet and think about it. And that's the way it is with the Kadosh Baruch Hu as well. And the Rambam talks about this all the time. But here we have, I maintain, whether it's painful, happy, or sad, we have a Gilui Shechina. We have a level of awareness of a Kadosh Baruch Hu running the world that is unprecedented, the kinds of things that have happened, with relative ease, so to speak. And therefore, let's not skip over that. Let's have awe. Now, with awe comes something else. You cannot have awe without this other thing. If you are in awe, you are immediately humbled. There's no way to have awe and not have humility. And there's no way to not be humble and have awe. Or there's no way to be humble that if you're humble, you're going to have awe. Okay, the two have to go together and one can't happen without the other. Give you an example from my life. I remember my first daughter's wedding. You know, first of all, let me go backwards. There's a minhag. I don't know if it's a minhag. It's a practice. It's a widespread, ancient practice that when you come to a wedding, there are aniyim, there are poor people who are there raising funds for their situation at a wedding. Why is that? It's not just because there's a lot of people gathered under one, and there used to be, in the good old days before Corona, there used to be a lot of people at weddings. That's not the reason. The reason is because the Bali Simcha are filled with joy. And when they're filled with joy, they're humbled because they realize that the Simcha didn't come from them. They realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them a gift. Baruch Hashem, their son got married. Baruch Hashem, their daughter got married. Baruch Hashem, there's a future here. So that Simcha creates humility. When you have that humility, somebody else's need becomes important. When you're too preoccupied with yourself and when you think you're running your life, and so you don't have time for other people. You're a nice person. You understand that they need help, but you don't have time for that. But here, how can I say no? I'm filled with Simcha. I remember discovering this feeling at our first child's wedding, walking down to the chuppah, the overwhelming feeling of total appreciation for the gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had given us, that she was marrying a fine Ben Torah and so on and so forth, a wonderful person. I was able to celebrate this with my Kehillah. It was an unbelievable feeling. And at that moment, all of a sudden, I loved everybody. I like to love everybody all the time, but I don't love everybody. But then I authentically loved everybody because I was humbled, because I had seen the hand of God in my life. So I think that's a very important thing. Let's not waste this experience. Let's spend the time noticing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and not only in the large things, but in the small things. If you have a little extra time because your routine is interrupted, look at nature, look at the spring happening. Actually take the time to just think about it. And at the same time, take the humility that comes with that partners with that, and realize you don't control the world, and you don't control anybody. You don't control your spouse, you don't control your children, you don't control your community, you don't control anybody. And not only that, it's not up to you to make sure that they are doing the right thing. It's really not up to you. It's up to you to inspire people, but it's not up to you to control people. Who is it up to control people? There's only one being in the world who is responsible to control everybody, and that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and not us. All of that comes relatively easily and naturally. And none of this can happen while you're surviving. When you're surviving, it's all about you not being overwhelmed and managing. And there's no focus on what's really going on, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the world. Which leads to another thing, and this leads very relevant to Sfiras HaOmer. First of all, what I just said is also relevant. The awe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I think it's an aspect that we're forgetting about. We left Mitzrayim on Pesach, and we came to Har Sinai, and we got the Torah. But that's not just what happened when we came to Har Sinai. When we came to Har Sinai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us revelation, which means he revealed himself to us in a way that caused awe, so much awe that we almost died. But the point is that we are now in a period of time where our job is to come to Har Sinai. It's our job to be filled with awe. This is what's going on during Sfiras HaOmer. Each single day, our job is to find another way to notice HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Without going into all the Kabbalah, that's what all the Sfiras are all about. The Hoj of Netzach, Netzach Shabbat, Tiferes of Malchus, all of that, all of those Kabbalistic notions are ways of noticing HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we wouldn't have noticed otherwise. So we're counting day by day and noticing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then we come with a sense of awe to Har Sinai. But that together with that comes something else, and that has to do with our relationship with others. We know that the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, the disciples of Rabbi Akiva, passed away in the thousands during this time. It's not lost on anyone, I'm sure, that they died in a plague, and they died during a 33-day period of time. It's not for us to say, but the Gemara says, Shalom Nahagu Kavod Zevazeh. They didn't interact with each other with the level of kavod, of dignity, of respect that they should have had for each other. It's almost impossible to imagine what that means, because there's no question that the disciples of Rabbi Akiva were extremely refined and extremely well developed and extremely in touch with the notion of kavod. But evidently, on their level, something was lacking, something was missing, and therefore this plague consumed thousands of them. And therefore, during this period of time, we have this period of semi-mourning to remember that. Now, it's not just a coincidence that during Sfiras HaOmer, it happened to be that in those 33 days, during the 49 days of Sfiras HaOmer, they died. And therefore, we have this overlay of Avelis, of mourning during this period of time. It's obvious that during this period of time, as we're counting from Yetzias Mitzrayim, from the Freedom Festival, from Cherus to Kabbalah Satorah to Har Sinai, that's when the issue of kavod is acutely relevant, when the issue of respect and for another person is relevant. It starts, number one, with respect for ourselves. Without going into all the details, the neshama is known as kavod because the whole notion of respect or reverence for a person comes from the recognition that a person is the housing of a neshama, of a soul created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reflect the nature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we look at each other, when we look at ourselves first, we are to see that we are not physical entities that also have a spiritual dimension. We are in our essence spiritual creatures that also have a physical dimension. The physical dimension is so much more apparent and it gets a lot of our attention, but it's the spiritual dimension, it's the neshama in us that's designed to reflect and relate to reflect Hashem and relate to Him. That is what we are all about. When we get that about ourselves and we have self-kavod, when we have kavod for ourselves, dignity for ourselves, expect of ourselves to be living elevated lives that reflect the fact that we mirror HaKadosh Baruch Hu's personality, so to speak. At that point, kavod for the next person starts becoming very, very natural because the other person is that as well. Now, we're going through a disease. We're going through a disease now. We're literally sitting here, spending our days preoccupied with germs, right? Preoccupied with little droplets of water that may somehow transfer contagion from one person to another. Who is more contagious? The person in your family, your spouse, your next door neighbor, the Jewish person down the street, the non-religious Jewish person down the street, the non-Jewish person down the street, the white person down the street, the black person down the street, the European guy who descended from Germans, the Russian, the Palestinian, the Indian, the Pakistani. Who is more contagious? I'm just trying to do the math over here. No one is more contagious than another. Not a tzaddik is more contagious or less contagious. Not a Russia is more contagious and less contagious. Which means what? This is what it means to me, and I know this is a bit radical, but I challenge anybody to deny this. Of course we're chosen by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and of course we have a special mission. But you know what that mission is? The mission is for us to redeem the world. And we have become so used to being the victim that we have deprived ourselves of the power that comes from being Jewish. And the power that comes from being Jewish is that we refuse to sell out on the value of a human being anywhere at any time. We don't give up on humanity the way humanity has given up on humanity. We believe that all humans are designed to know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All humans are designed to reflect the nature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually cares about the whole world. And that's why we daven, V'haya Hashem echad u'shmo echad, that God's name will be one. What does that mean? That everybody in the world, especially non-Jews, will know God and know him as their creator. That's our job. We can't do that job if we specialize in worshiping division. And it starts with our own families, and it starts with our own community, because no one who practices division of any sort can relate properly to anybody, because there's no place to stop. Once you are a person who believes in separation, who believes in resentment, who believes in separation and distance, who believes that certain people are not worthy of being in your life, who believes that you can write off certain people or certain groups, who believe that God doesn't care about them or they have no right to exist, there's no end to where that will go. And it's not Jewish. It's not what we want. So one thing, it seems to me, that's staring us in the face is that the coronavirus has reminded us that we are absolutely vulnerable to the well-being or the not well-being of all human beings in the world. And we have absolutely got to care about the whole world. That's what it means to be concerned about Mashiach. We don't want Mashiach so that we can be spared the agony of our miserable existence that we have now, or that some people that we care about will be spared of that misery. What we want Mashiach for is so that Hashem will be known to all of his creatures, so that he will have nachas from his world, which means we're makabel achrayos for that. But all of that comes only if we can rid ourselves of the midah of separation, of deciding where our barriers are. Now, this is a very difficult thing because we've been trained to hate. And we're now in a society, you may have noticed in the last 10 or 15 years, and I say that advisedly, I don't think it was 20 years ago, but in the last 10 or 15 years, with the advent of talk radio and all of the CNN and the Fox and the MSNBC and all the channels that specialize in making you angry at the things that you already are angry about before you turned on the station, that's what the media has become now. We are now in a period of time where intelligent people lead you in resenting someone or something and mocking personally people with whom you agree. And it's become part of our psyche. It's not Jewish. And it's totally against the reason that we're born. It's totally against the reason we exist. So what I'm saying is that this period of Sfiras HaOmer is designed for us to lead the way to Har Sinai, to be in awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be humble about our own roles in the world, meaning to be humble about our desire to control and make things go. And it's also a period of time when we are specializing in reaching out and treating our fellow Jews with kavod, including the ones that we resent. Because if we allow ourselves the privilege and the right to resent anywhere, then our relationships that are good are really a fake. It's just because it works for us. It's not because we're committed to them, and it's not because we believe in them. So this is our job, and I believe all of this can come from contemplation and thinking about what we've experienced in the last few weeks. Finally, I want to leave you with two other thoughts, and I'm running a little bit longer than I thought, but for my record, this is actually doing pretty good. Um, I noticed a couple things in the past few weeks that surprised me. And I'll tell you what surprised me. I noticed positive things about me that surprised me. My wife and I developed this practice right away. You know, we closed the shul on a Sunday. I don't know what the date was. So that first Shabbos, both of us kind of looked at each other about 8:30 in the morning, and we said, you know, why don't we just go into the shul and daven in shul? So we've been davening alone in shul every Shabbos and Yom Tov since then. It's a very emotional thing for me. I didn't realize how much. So just last Shabbos, I was during a break. My wife had to go out for a minute. So while I was waiting for her, I saw a chair out of place in the shul. Right, it was a little bit out of an angle. So I walked over to that aisle and I straightened out the chair and I went wherever it is, even though there's no hope that that chair is going to be used for the next, I don't know what, for the next few weeks. My wife walked in and she saw me straightening out the chair from a distance. And she said to me something she doesn't know till this moment that it was a gift. She said to me, "You really love the shul, don't you?" And I realized, I didn't never realize how much I love the shul. I don't mean this shul. I mean the idea of shul, the idea that Jews come together in Kiddush Hashem to daven to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And only by being interrupted do I realize how much I love shul. And I think it's important for all of us to start at, we've all noticed things that we love. We ought to own it. Own what we've discovered that we love. What do you miss? Some people told me they wish they could hug people. So it's true, they miss being hugged. So that means they love hugging. That's great. Own that and treasure that about yourself. But also try to discover ways that you can hug an air hug now, or some kind of a verbal hug, or some other kind of action hug. So I discovered that I love the shul. I actually discovered that I love Shabbos, because when you peel away all the responsibility that a rabbi has in interacting with the kehillah, including the drasha and including Kiddush, and so on and so forth, and you just leave Shabbos, wow, it's an amazing thing. I actually love Shabbos. And I also discovered that I love people. I cannot tell you how excited I am when people walk by the house on the street and I look out the window, there they are. I go running outside, hi, how are you? From a distance, or on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, when we walk down the various streets in our neighborhood to greet people. It's so exciting to see them, and they're excited to see me. I actually love people. I didn't realize that beforehand. I was always nice to people, but I love people. So I would suggest to you, ask yourselves, what have you discovered that you love? It's important. Get to know yourself and actually own that and build on that. And then finally, this is a favorite topic of mine, but I think it's particularly relevant here. Be vulnerable, which means notice how needy you are. The best way in the world to have a relationship is to admit your neediness. The worst way in the world to be in a relationship is to deny your neediness. Starting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you start recognizing how much we need him in every area. I had a little pain in one of my toes on Yom Tov, and it was almost like it was going to ruin my day. I tell you, so I need a HaKadosh Baruch Hu to keep my toe okay. And not only that one, but the next toe over, and the next toe over, and then I got to move to the other foot. The whole thing. The point is, when you recognize how needy you are, then all of a sudden you're open to relationship. And when you're vulnerable, not just needy, but vulnerable, when you're open about your feelings, when you share your feelings, including your negative feelings, I say it openly, and I say it openly, I am scared. I don't want to die now. I'm going to die, but I don't want to die now. I want to die later, and I don't want to die of corona. I'm scared. That's why I'm hiding at home. I'm not hiding at home because I'm powerful, because I'm strong, and because I'm confident, and because I'm smart, and because I listen. I'm hiding at home because I'm scared of dying. And that's a wonderful thing to know, because that way I'm able to be open about my vulnerability, and therefore I can daven about it, as opposed to not davening about it because I'm just doing what everybody else is doing. I'm just doing the wise thing. No, I'm scared. And not only that, I need people. I need, not only that, I realize now, I am not a rabbi unless I have a shul. I need those people. I am not a rabbi unless you listen to me. If you don't have any need for me, I have no reason to exist. So I desperately need you for me to have some meaning in life. So I'm open to about these things. And the more open we are, the more we can be involved in relationship. And the more we deny our feelings and our needs, and the more we don't even admit them, the more difficult it is for others to make a difference for us. So this period of time, it makes us all very vulnerable. That's what it's all about. The whole world is hiding because we're all scared of dying. That's what it's all about. The entire economy has been dismantled because we are scared. Nothing wrong with that. We should be. But the point is, let's admit it. Let's admit that we have needs, that we're weak, that we don't have everything figured out. Well, if we can get real about that, about our human condition, which is that we're not in charge and we can't make everything go right, no matter what, right? If we get all that straight, then we're open to relationship and we're open to actually being real with each other. And then we can respect each other, we can appreciate each other, and we can connect to each other, and we can fulfill our mission in this world. So those are a few of my thoughts about this whole experience. And I am eager to respond to any thoughts or questions or objections or anything that you have now or not. There's no reason you have to, but I think it might be useful if anybody has anything that they'd like to bring up that was triggered by anything that I said. I think somebody has to unmute everybody in order to allow them to talk.
Naftali Karp here.
Shalom Aleichem.
I'm just I don't know if you had any answers because everything you said is I no rebuttals, but the reality of many certainly young families and I'm sure older families also is people don't have the time to not be overwhelmed. People are really unfortunately not having the time to do some of the things you're saying, and it is scary. Someone actually asked this to me. They said, Rabbi, I'm nervous that we're going to walk away from this because we're so overwhelmed. I don't know if you have any.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for pointing out. I am a bit desensitized. Baruch Hashem, our children are all adults and out of the house. And so although my wife and I are quite busy, mamish morning till night, but we don't have these interruptions and we're not homeschooling. We're not trying to manage our kids with all kinds of situations. And so I'm not, you're right. The nisanos that younger families are experiencing are great. I still maintain that the paradigm between survivor and a person who's a bocher exists there as well. What I mean is, 5 minutes can be carved out. I'll give you an example in my own experience here. So I say the daf. So because we don't have a minyan, so we're offering on Zoom, we're offering to daven together at Hanetzacham. I think a lot of people are doing that. So we're davening at sunrise. Well, sunrise has an annoying habit. It gets earlier every day. So now, but I'm saying the daf before sunrise. So now I've got to get up extra early every single day. I'm exhausted. And I really can't afford this. And guess what? I haven't missed a minute. So we were about 40 minutes earlier than when we started this whole thing. And I was already exhausted getting up for the daf before the later shacharis. And now shacharis is, in Atlanta's Hanetzacham at 6:56 tomorrow morning. So on 5:56, I'm sorry. 6:50, whatever it is. The daf is, whatever. So I'm doing it. So what I'm saying is it can be done. You have to be willing to pay a price in order to exercise choice. So it's not all or nothing is what I'm saying. And I'll be brief with this. It's not all or nothing. Carving out 5 minutes for yourself is not impossible, even with a young family, even with a number of kids, Kanai Hara, who are day and night, whatever it is, day and night demanding. Getting up early in the morning, being out in the dark, outside, just for a few minutes, thinking. It's unbelievable the difference between that and not even having 5 minutes. So there are choices that can be made.
Yeah.
I see somebody named Miriam Lipson who has a beard is raising his hand. Go ahead.
Rabbi Feldman, I really did enjoy your speech, your talk, whatever we call it. I enjoyed it very much. There were really a lot of points there that I could really identify with. I'm also a Bachar, and I could not believe the accuracy with which you described the experience that I had at that age as well. That was just really uncanny. It really blew me away.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out something, and it's not in any way, it's just that and your message is really well taken in terms of respect for all people. And even though, as you said, we're really only speculating when we talk about the meaning of the Hashgacha Pratis, but it is an obvious thing that this is not something that only hit Klal Yisrael. This is something that separated all people from each other. So it definitely suggests a need to improve in the areas that you described. But the thing is like this, there is also a reality to the fact that there are halachas that we have to maintain our separateness. That's first of all. And second of all, there are ideologies out there, a lot of ideologies that not only compete with us, but militate against us. So in other words, your point is well taken, but I just would like to ask you to comment on how we balance that with these other realities, which also really have to be part of the picture.
Yeah, so very good. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify this, because it's a very delicate subject. First of all, as Jews, we absolutely must make judgments, and we must reject lifestyles and ideologies that are inconsistent and major challenges to our Torah way of life. And especially nowadays, they threaten to invade the inner sanctum of our homes. And therefore, if we don't have very strong a sense of separateness, we're not going to make it. And we see what's happening in Jewish communities all over, because it's so easy to lose this sense of separateness. So I would even say this: we are separate because we're there for the world. I'll tell you a short story that blew me away, and I was the center of the story. We have a church across the street from our shul, and I grew up here. So literally, for the first 50 years of my life, I never even looked at the building. It was just there. It's just like an empty space. Finally, after 50 years, one of the youth ministers there, or somebody, asked me to please speak to their Sunday morning breakfast. And mamish, because of Darkei Shalom, I said yes. After like 50 years, and this is an Episcopalian church that puts up a sign outside of Rosh Hashanah that says Shana Tova. They're trying to show their friendship to Jews. They have great intentions. They've never done anything hostile, nothing close. And so they invited me to this breakfast, and I was careful that it would not, that it would be the proper conditions, that it wouldn't be a prayer breakfast. I didn't want any prayer with their, Anyway, so they asked me there. They were very taken by whatever words I shared with them. So one of the silver-haired, white pearl-wearing ladies raises her hand with great enthusiasm and says, "Rabbi Feldman, when can we have our youth group get together with your youth group? We can collaborate on some kind of a community project." So this was like, at that moment I had a choice, and I literally channeled HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please put the right words in my mouth. So I cannot tell you that he did or not. I can just tell you what I said, and I'm glad I said it. I said to her, this may surprise you, but the goal of my youth group is to make sure that my children never marry your children. And I want you to know why you should embrace that goal. And she said, "Really?" I said, "Yes, because the only reason you believe in one God is because my family stayed distinct from yours and did not assimilate. The moment we lose our identity, you have no legs to stand on with your faith. We are the source of everything that you treasure, and we want us to remain distinct." That's important for her to hear, but it's important for me to hear. So we're distinct for the Goyim. But the point is, we're not distinct because the Goyim are less than dogs. And even the Goyim who believe the wrong thing, they are Tselem Elokim, and it's our job to live lives of Kedusha so that humanity doesn't give up on itself. It doesn't mean we're ecumenical. It doesn't mean whether we're we're evangelical, doesn't mean that we're going out there trying to transform humanity by teaching them. Although nowadays there are unbelievable opportunities. That's another story. That's another story. But the main point is, in our tefillah, what are we davening for? And then one more point I'll make, and I assume you agree with this. Esav does tshuva. Esav does tshuva. That's not just some kind of interesting midrash thing for kindergarten. That tells us that the Catholic Church in Yemos HaMashiach will believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu by our definition, not by theirs. That's what it tells me. So therefore, the world is redeemable. These are radical thoughts only because they're not said enough, but they are the basic truth of reading the Bible, the Jewish Bible, excuse me. Anyway, so that's, we're radically separate, but we're there for them.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for the opportunity to clarify.
Okay, Rabbi Feldman, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So
I'm going to be signing out, but thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
how should we respond to someone who's not following the guidelines set by Rabbanim and the CDC?
So there's a trap here, and believe you me, I got that same problem because I'm the Rabbanim, and I'm the ones who are, and we have CDC less than 2 miles from my house. The headquarters is there, you know, and we have. I consult regularly with 2 CDC doctors who are members of our community, and we have the same human tendency here that we have everywhere else. There's a trap. And I've fallen into the trap from time to time. And I was actually talking about it in my talk, and I sense that you picked it up. When we find people behaving in ways that are clearly, from our point of view, wrong and inappropriate, we can either become righteously indignant, and then it eats away, it corrodes in our shama, and we pay a terrible price. We become filled with resentment and with hate and with a feeling of revulsion, and that's the beginning. It gets worse, okay? And then who suffers is us, and we end up not being creatures who reflect the nature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The other thing is, at this moment, I am not in compliance with all the guidelines of life that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave me. So why all of a sudden, I came out, Ani HaKadosh, Ilan Feldman, the holy rabbi, came out with some guidelines of how you conduct your life in terms of walking down the street. And if somebody doesn't follow those rules, I am angrier at them than HaKadosh Baruch Hu is of me, I hope. Right? I'm not in compliance right now in certain ways. So the point is, we've got to know what is the right thing and leave room for people to deviate from the right thing. And we have to find a way to love them. And if we can do that, doesn't mean you accept that the wrong thing is okay. But if we can do that, we can actually make a difference for them. Otherwise, we cannot make a difference for people who don't practice by our definition of right and wrong. It's a lifelong struggle for me, and I think I think I've defined the parameters of the struggle accurately. I know that in my show, there are people who don't follow my directives in everything, in talking in the back of the show, in kiddush clubs, things like that. I am totally ineffective with them when I am furious at them.